Greetings, this is Eat Fat, Grow Slim, and I want to talk about a nasty little disease today called gout. It's a sort of arthritis, which I'm sure if you're actually on this page you know exactly what it's like. It's horrible. So I got my first attack in 1995 and it was like some sort of joke. I was hobbling around with a 17th century disease of an old fart, and everyone thought it was very hilarious because they'd never seen anyone with gout before. My dad had gout for years and years and years. He was controlling it with drugs. For me, it was about to start a new journey of understanding what's going on with my body. And the doctor said, "Oh, how much do you drink?" I said, "Not very much." "And how much red meat do you eat?" And I said, "Not very much." "How about seafood? Do you eat a lot of that?" "No, I don't like it. I don't like it. I have never liked it. I always hate it." Instinctively, interestingly. But let's talk about what gout is, because I know what it is, I know what causes it, and I know how to avoid those nasty little flare-ups. So let's start from the basics. Gout is an inflammatory form of arthritis that develops when uric acid levels in the bloodstream rises high enough for crystals to form inside a joint. These crystals are sharp and needle-like, and when the immune system reacts to them, the result is a sudden intense pain and swelling that characterises the gout flare-up, let's say. So, people often describe the pain as unbearable, and it frequently appears overnight, giving the impression that it has come out of nowhere. In reality, there is a clear biological set of processes behind it, and understanding that process makes the condition far less mysterious and far more manageable. Let's get on with it. Let's talk about the uric acid aspect of gout. So it's a normal substance, uric acid. It's produced when the body reacts to purines in the liver. Purines come partly from food and partly from natural turnover of our own cells. In fact, it's the turnover of DNA, RNA and ATP principally, and the body constantly is renewing this tissue, and that renewal process produces these purines whether we like it or not. So the issue is not the existence of uric acid, but the balance between how much is produced and how much we can efficiently remove it from the body. It's important to avoid the simple idea that obesity itself causes gout. This is a common problem. Diabetes type 2 is attributed to obesity. Fatty liver disease is also attributed to obesity, but obesity itself does not cause any of these diseases. It's something that comes along with the same set of processes that cause the gout and the fatty liver disease and the obesity. The real issue is metabolic health. So let's get down to all the things that contribute. So it's purines, fructose, my favourite, and alcohol are the other main drivers of uric acid. So for a long time it was just about purines. They were thought to be the primary cause of gout, and the entire medical profession had that understanding, built around an idea that eating too many purine-rich foods was the central problem. And exactly that is what the doctor told me. You're making too many purines and you need to cut down on red meat. However, that wasn't a solution for me because I wasn't eating enough red meat in the first place. So, as a result, patients often are told to avoid purine-rich foods while receiving little or no information about the other, more powerful drivers of uric acid. So one of those drivers is back to our old friend fructose, and if you've seen my video on fatty liver, I do mention at the end uric acid and gout, and this is a link up because fructose remains surprisingly underemphasised in clinical conversations. Even now, many doctors fail to mention fructose at all, despite the fact that this one has been known as one of the potent triggers of uric acid production since the late 20th century, actually. I think 1996, doctors have been made aware of this, and that was actually the year after I was diagnosed, interestingly. Now, unlike glucose, which can be used by almost every other cell in the body, fructose is processed almost entirely in the liver. When the liver metabolizes fructose, it rapidly consumes energy molecules and produces a surge of uric acid as a byproduct. And of course, as I talked about in the fatty liver video, it also produces fat in the liver. This is why sugary drinks, fruit juices, sweets, and foods containing high fructose corn syrup are strongly associated with gout. And remember, all table sugar is half fructose and half glucose. Glucose has its own problems in different ways. Fructose has to go through the fat and uric acid process. In this way, fructose sits at the centre of several metabolic problems that converge on gout, fatty liver, and obviously obesity and diabetes too. That's when I say diabetes, I almost invariably am referring to type 2. Now, alcohol. Everyone knows about alcohol. You see the picture of the old guy here with his gouty toe slurping on his port wine. It increases the production of uric acid while simultaneously reducing the kidney's ability to excrete it. Now, beer is particularly problematic because it contains both alcohol and purines from the brewer's yeast. As a little aside, if you're suffering from gout and you like Marmite, that is super high in purines. So creating a double effect, the beer creates a double effect now, but wine and spirits are slightly less potent in this regard, but it's the high alcohol, again, which causes the problem. And any kind of alcohol can tip the balance in someone who is already close to the threshold. Dehydration also plays a major role. When the body is short of water, the kidneys conserve fluid and excrete less uric acid. Even mild dehydration can be enough to trigger a flare. This explains why attacks often follow hot weather, strenuous exercise without adequate hydration, alcohol consumption, or illnesses that cause any kind of fluid loss. So, something like a trauma to the joint, something as simple as stubbing your toe, knocking your foot against a step, or twisting the joint of the ankle, physically dislodges the crystals or irritate the joint. In fact, any shock can cause crystals that are under solution to crystallize. And when that happens, the crystals that were previously sitting openly can shred into the joint, and that's where the immune system reacts. And many people experience their first gout attack after a minor injury of this kind. And it can seem baffling, to stub your toe and then spend the next week with your foot in the air, taking anti-inflammatories and paracetamol or whatever. But let's understand the mechanism. It's interesting, actually. There's a reason why it happens in the extremities. It happens most commonly, almost invariably, the first time in your toe, the big toe. It can happen in your ankles. It can happen a bit less chance, but it can happen in your knees. It can get into your fingers. What has all this got in common? They're extremities. Okay, they're extremities, and they're not always well flushed with fluid. They tend to be colder, and as we all know, cold can encourage crystallization. So preventing flares is largely about improving your metabolic environment in which uric acid is produced and cleared. This does not mean focusing on weight as a number, but on reducing the metabolic pressures that lead to visceral and liver fat, reducing fructose intake, moderating alcohol, eating whole foods, staying physically active, and improving insulin sensitivity. All help regulate uric acid more effectively. Insulin sensitivity is really important because I think it is perfectly easy to go on eating buckets of red meat, but if your insulin resistance is low, if you're not eating all the sugars, you're not eating the fructose, and your insulin levels are generally low, and your body is sensitive to that insulin, then what happens is the kidneys work better. Okay, the heart of many kidney problems is because we are metabolically unhealthy through insulin resistance. Okay, so most people live in the real world. You know, they're confronted with carbohydrates every day. They're confronted with sweet things every day. And a lot of people, I'd say the vast majority of people in the West, are more or less addicted to sugar. And so people tend to go to a special and wonderful drug called allopurinol. It used to be you could only treat gout with colchicine, which is a very ancient method. I think it actually goes back to ancient times, colchicine, but that's only an anti-inflammatory. Right, let's talk about allopurinol just a minute. It's a brilliant drug, and if you don't get any side effects, you know, it's a great preventative. Now, when a flare-up does occur, anti-inflammatory medications, colchicine, blah, blah, blah. But for long-term prevention, many people turn to allopurinol. So that actually reduces the production of uric acid, and it's widely used, safe for long-term management and highly effective when taken consistently. Word of warning, if you've got a flare-up, don't take allopurinol because it can make it worse. It does not treat a flare-up, but prevents the conditions that allow a flare-up to occur. So let's bring it all together. Gout is not simply a matter of eating the wrong foods or carrying excess weight. It is a metabolic condition shaped by how the body handles purines, fructose, alcohol, hydration, and the broader context of metabolic health. By understanding what gout is exactly, what raises uric acid, what triggers the flares, and what affects the excretion of uric acid, how treatments can work. If you can take that away, you can take this knowledge and not rely on the doctor to tell you just lose some weight or something like that, or keep taking the pills. And as a final word, it's worth remembering that gout rarely travels alone. It often appears alongside fatty liver, obesity, and the wider dysregulation of insulin, the sugar cycle, all of which sit under the umbrella of metabolic syndrome, what you might like to call metabolic mayhem. And it's driven by insulin resistance. In other words, gout is not an isolated troublemaker, but more like, you know, a loud friend who shows up at a party with three equally unruly companions. Deal with the whole group and life becomes much quieter. So, hope you enjoy this. Take a look at the fatty liver one as well, because they are kind of linked, and I'll see you on the next one.